Hey everyone, Todd from Sideshow Effects once again, and in this video I'm going to go through the installation and navigation of our Cubase Pro Profiles for the Stream Deck XL and MK device. Now this is version 3.0. We've included a lot of new things in this version, including the support of Cubase 13. Now I've added quite a few things in this version 3.0, including a VST loader that allows you to load an instrument track with a specific VST, all with a single button press. Same thing with an effects loader, where you can, at the press of a button, load up any of your own effects. We have instant track naming. We've integrated the control room with faders and buttons, the ability to colorize your tracks and events. We've added in articulation keys. We've given you the ability to control different parts of your VST parameters. We'll demonstrate how that can be handled. We have an emulation controller for Arturia labs, as well as Halion sonic controls. And on the Windows side, we've also included a handy utility script that allows you to use third-party volume controllers to manipulate parameters within Cubase. Now it's always a good idea to follow through with the PDF that's included in the pack, as it has the most recent up-to-date information, even more recent than this video may have. We encourage you to go through the manual step by step and make sure that you've got everything covered to ensure everything is working correctly. Now in the pack you'll see that we have three PDFs. We have a Cubase shortcut PDF that just details all of the shortcuts that we've applied to the profile. That's specifically for Cubase 11 users. Now, those of you who are working with Cubase 12 and Cubase 13, you no longer need to have shortcuts, so you will not be required to load a shortcut file, and if you have modified your own personal shortcut file, you can continue using that, because this new version 3.0 for Cubase 12 and 13 users is completely MIDI driven, so it doesn't call to any shortcuts. So in the pack you can see we have these PDFs. So there's an installation guide for Cubase 11, and there's a separate installation guide for Cubase 12 and 13. So the first thing we want to do, when we've got the pack open here, of course, you're going to open up the PDF and follow through those instructions. But let's go through, and we're going to open up this plugin folder. And we have our own proprietary plugin that we use. With your Stream Deck software open, just double-click this file, and it will load in. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to load in the MIDI plugin that's available through the Elgato Marketplace. Now if you're on version 6.4 or later of the Stream Deck software, you will see the Marketplace icon up here. So we'll click on that, it will open up our window browser, and in the Marketplace, in the search, we're going to type in MIDI and enter, and it gives us a few options. We're going to load this plugin here, MIDI by Trevliga Spel. And make sure that you're signed in. And if you see an open in Stream Deck, it's likely that you have already installed this, either from a previous version of our packs or perhaps from an earlier use. So you don't need to do anything. This would indicate that you already have it installed. If you see a blue Get button here, that means it isn't installed. You would press Get and it would self-install into your software. If you don't see it here at all, you likely will need to be signed into your account in order to be able to get this plugin installed. Now, if you're still working with Stream Deck version 6.3 or earlier, these are the steps you need to do. We're going to go to the Stream Deck store, and we're going to type in the search field MIDI. And there will be a few results here. This is the one we're interested in, just called MIDI. We're going to, if you don't have it installed, you'll just click the blue install button here, install it, and it will be available for you. If at any time you find that the pack is not responding as you feel it should, maybe you're getting some yellow triangles, something like that, one of the first things you'll want to do then is reinstall this MIDI plugin. So what we do is just click on any one of the plugins here. If we right click on it, we can say uninstall, and then you would go back into the Marketplace and just install it again. That can sometimes clear up any issues you might be having. Now for this next section, we're going to jump into Cubase right away, and we're going to go to the Project menu, go down to Project Logical Editor, and click on Setup, and click on the Preset drop down here, and we're going to click on the Show User Presets location. Now this is just a handy way to open up the location that we need. So we'll minimize Cubase for now, This is just a handy way to give us this location, because what we need to do is go into this Project Logical Preset folder, and you'll see there's a Colorize folder here. We want to click and drag this into the earlier presets folder that you see in this location under Project Logical Editor. You'll see earlier presets. You'll click and drag this into the earlier presets folder. And you see I already have it here. It's right here, listed Colorize. And then you can close that window. Now this next section, I'm going to be going through the steps that are specific to the Macintosh system. So if you're working with Windows, you can skip ahead to the chapter where the window starts. So on the Mac system, you're going to want to go to your Audio MIDI setup. And if you don't see this, if I close that down, if you don't see any window open here, you're going to go to Window Show MIDI Studio, and then this will pop up. And this is your properties pane here. So if we double click that, our properties are going to show up. I'm just going to minimize my Stream Deck for a second. And you'll see we have device name. We're going to leave this blank. Very important. Don't have anything in here. Secondly, we're going to make sure that device online is checked. Make sure that's checked. Now we're going to go down to the ports section here. We're going to click on the plus arrow first. It creates a bus for us here. We're going to add 4 new ports. So let's make this live so that we can type over it. And we're going to type it in exactly as I'm typing here. Capital M, IDI, capital K, EYS, underscore, capital I, capital N. So it's MIDI keys underscore in. Typed exactly like that. It's case sensitive. And then we can click the plus arrow again to get another port. Same thing. Let's double click on it until we get it active. And we're going to do the same thing, except it's going to be out. Capital M, IDI, capital K, EYS, underscore, OUT. MIDI keys out. Now we're going to add a third. Click on the plus. Now this one, it might be that you already have this one installed already from a previous installation, which is fine. If you already have it, nothing has changed with it. It is our Stream Deck to DAW track and DAW track to Stream Deck ports. So we'll type it capital S, T-R-E-A-M, capital D-E-C-K, the number 2, capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K. Stream Deck to DAW track. Typed exactly that way. And then hit the plus sign again for our fourth one. Make it active. Capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K, the number 2, capital S-T-R-A-A-M, capital D-E-C-K. DAW track to Stream Deck. Now you have those 4 ports entered in. Click Apply. Now the next thing we want to do is we've got some graphics we want to copy over into a specific location. So we're going to bring up our Documents folder here. So this is just your local documents. And we will click and drag the Trevliga Spel folder into our documents. You see I already have it here. Now if you're working from a previous installation, or you have another one of our packs that has Trevliga Spel folder in it, then you can safely just open this folder up and copy just these folders into the Trevliga Spel folder. So you don't want to replace it if it already is there. You'll just drag the contents into the Trevliga Spel folder. Now if you're working in Cubase 11 or earlier, you are required to use our keyboard shortcut file that we have included. Cubase 12 and 13, you don't need to worry about this step because your commands are all MIDI driven. They're not driven by keyboard shortcuts. So we need to put our key command file that you'll see here in a specific location. Now that location is the hard drive, users, your username, library, preferences, the version of Cubase you're working with. This is a Elements version I have on this system of Cubase 11. And in its presets folder. Now inside that presets folder is a key commands folder, so you will take this file and we will drag it into that key commands folder. And when you restart Cubase, now I'm running Cubase 13 here, you wouldn't be doing this in 13. Let's just assume this is Cubase 11. the directives are the same. You would go into Edit and Key Commands, you would go under the preset, and you would load up the Sideshow FX Key Command Mac version 3 file. So once again, if you're using 12 or 13, you don't need to do this. You would only do this in Cubase 11 or earlier. Now, if you can't find your library folder, if it's hidden for you, it's very quick on the Mac, you hold down the Option key while you click on the Go menu at the top here of your Finder, and you'll see libraries listed here, and you can just open it that way. So now that we have those ports loaded in, we can go into Cubase, and we'll continue the setup of those MIDI ports. So in Cubase, you're going to go to Studio Setup. You'll click on MIDI Port Setup, and this is the section that you want to be able to control. Now we've got this detailed very clearly in our PDF, so I recommend you open the PDF and make sure that you have got the correct checkboxes checked or unchecked. But we'll quickly go through it here. We're going to ignore the Dotamaki's. So first we see we've got a DAW track to Stream Deck in our import. Well, we want both of those off. Next we see in our import MIDI keys in. These should both be on. The MIDI keys out in our import. These should both be off. Still in the import we have our Stream Deck to DAW track. You want this on, and make sure this one under the All MIDI is off. Very important, you'll get loop back if you leave that on. Now we look at the out ports. We have a DAW track to Stream Deck. We're going to leave that checked. We have MIDI keys in our out port. We're going to deselect that. In the out port, MIDI keys out. Keep that active. And also in the out, we have a Stream Deck to DAW track. We're going to deselect that. So your ports should match exactly what we've got here. And once again, double check it in the PDF. Now, while we're here, we're going to set up our MIDI remote. This is for Cubase 12 and 13 only, not for Cubase 11 or earlier. So we'll click on MIDI remote, and we'll click on the Open MIDI Remote Manager. We'll click on Import Script, and we're going to navigate to our Sideshow FX download. Go to the MIDI remote folder, go into the Mac folder, and this file here, the Sideshow FX track mix strip, is the one we want to import. So we'll click on that, say open, and it loads up here. Now it should automatically enable the script. If for some reason you see it presented like this, you want to make sure you just press on Enable Controller Script and it will make itself live. Now let's just go over to the MIDI Controllers tab, and we want to just double check that the import does read Stream Deck to DAW track and the output does read DAW track to Stream Deck. That way we know we're properly connected. Now the next thing to do, of course, is to load in the Stream Deck profile itself. Since we're working on the Mac, we would go into the Mac folder. Depending which version of Cubase you're running, Cubase 11 or earlier, you will load up one of these profiles depending on which device you're using, either the XL or the regular MK. And since I'm currently on the Mac running Cubase 13 with an XL device, this is the one that I would choose. And you can import it simply by double-clicking it as long as your Stream Deck software is open. So if we have the software open here, I can double-click this file and it will load up. And when it does, this is what it's going to look like. Now the first thing we're going to do over on the Windows side is we're going to download a piece of software called LoopMIDI. Now if you don't have LoopMIDI already installed, you go to the website, we have the link in our PDF, and you download LoopMIDI. And we're going to go to the Setup tab of LoopMIDI here, and we're going to add in 4 new ports. Now what we'll do first, we're going to start adding the name in. You're not going to click any buttons here. You're going to just start typing in the name. Now the first one we're going to do is Stream Deck to DAW track. So capital S, T-R-E-A-M, capital D-E-C-K, the number 2, capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K. So that's Stream Deck to DAW track, case sensitive, exactly as you see it here. We then click the plus button, and that will add in that port, and we'll see it when we scroll to the bottom here. You'll see it's added in. We're going to add in a second, and this will be capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K, number 2, capital S, E-A-M, capital D-E-C-K. DAW track to Stream Deck. We then hit the plus to enter in that. Scroll to the bottom, we can see it's been entered. Our third is going to be MIDI keys in, so capital M-I-D-I, capital K-A-Y-S, underscore, capital I, capital N. So MIDI keys in, written exactly like that. Add the plus. And then our fourth is MIDI keys out. Capital M-I-D-I, capital K-E-Y-S, underscore, O-U-T in capitals. MIDI keys out. And we add those in as well. So now we can keep LoopMIDI open. We're just going to stuff it off down to the bottom somewhere. Now the next thing we want to do, go to our Sideshow Effects folder here, and we're going to take the Trevliga Spel folder, and we're going to drag it to our Documents folder. Now if you already have a Trevliga Spel folder from one of our previous packs, you will go inside of the Trevliga Spel folder in your new download, your Cubase download, copy these files and put them in the Trevliga Spel. Don't overwrite this one. You're just going to bring the contents into Trevliga Spel. Now on the Windows side, we have a utility script that we're going to demonstrate in a few minutes. We're going to put this also into our Documents folder. So navigate to where your documents are. You're going to take this and drag it and put it in your documents. I already have it there. Now let's go into Cubase. We're going to open up our studio setup. Let's go to the MIDI port setup. And you'll see we have several different ports here. You may have more or less than what I'm demonstrating here. But let's just focus on the 4 ports we just installed. You can see that we've got DAW track to Stream Deck. We just entered that one. We want to make sure in the import that DAW track to Stream Deck is not checked on either one of these boxes. So that's correct. Next one we entered in was MIDI keys in our import. We want to make sure that both are selected, which they are. MIDI keys out in the import. We want to make sure that both are not selected, which is also correct. And the last one we just entered was Stream Deck to DAW track. In the import, we want to make sure that the first is selected, but the in all MIDI is not selected. If this is selected, you're going to get loopback. Okay, turning to the out port, we'll go down to the DAW track to Stream Deck. It should be selected. MIDI keys in should be unselected. MIDI keys out should be selected. And the Stream Deck to DAW track should be unselected, just the way you see here. So we have this very easily detailed in the PDF. I encourage you to compare what you have on your MIDI port setup with what we have in the PDF, and that way you will ensure that your settings are correct. Next thing we're going to do is go to MIDI Remote, and we're going to open up the MIDI Remote Manager, and we'll go to the import script here, and we'll click into the MIDI Remote, into the Windows, and you'll see we have this track mix strip file. We're going to select it, and it should already be enabled. If you load it in and it looks like this, enable, just make sure you click enable controller script. It should be listed like this, and you'll see that it's active and it appears in your lower zone here. Now just go into MIDI controllers and just double check that you've got the Stream Deck to DAW track and DAW track to Stream Deck. It should auto populate, which it has, and that makes sure that it is operational. Now if you're working with Cubase 11 or earlier on the Windows system, there's one extra thing you need to do. Because you're going to be using keyboard shortcuts and not using the MIDI remote for your key commands, we'll need to copy our key command that's in our key command folder in your Sideshow Effects download here. So in here, if we go into the Windows folder, there's a key command file. You want to click this and drag it into this location. So it's your app data folder, roaming, Steinberg, your version of Cubase, presets, key commands. That is where you want to place this file. You can see I already have it here. And once you place that in there, restart Cubase, and then you can go into Edit, key commands, and under the presets here, pull this down, and you're going to select our Sideshow Effects key command Win version 3. Say OK, and that'll be loaded into your system. Now, of course, the last thing to do is you want to import the Stream Deck profiles themselves. So in the Stream Deck profiles folder, into the Windows folder, and depending on which Cubase application you're working with, 11, 12, or 13, you will now navigate to that folder. I'm currently on 12, and with an XL device, so I would choose this one here. And once it's loaded up, this is the main page. Now, as stated earlier, if you're a Cubase 11 or earlier user, you won't be using that MIDI remote, because that MIDI remote is what allows you to use all of our commands without a keyboard shortcut file. The MIDI remote also gives you access to quick controls, which we're going to demonstrate in a little bit. Now, Cubase 11 users, if you want to be able to access the quick controls, you'll need to install our VST Quick Controls. So how we do that, we'll go into Studio Setup. Once again, this is Cubase 11 only. Cubase 12 and 13 don't need to do this. We're going to click on VST Quick Controls. We're going to select Import, navigate to our Sideshow Effects folder, click the Quick Control folder, and we're going to select the Quick Control XML file. Say Open. And then for the MIDI input, we'll make sure that we select the Stream Deck to DAW track, and the MIDI output will be the DAW track to Stream Deck. So now we're ready to start assigning the coordinates to our different quick controls, and it's very easily done. So let's go to our Stream Deck device, and we're going to go into the quick control section. And you see we have a bank of 8 different controls along the middle here. Well, in the VST Quick Control section, we're going to click this Learn button, and with the first quick controller selected, we're going to press on either the top or bottom of the first controller. And then we can select Quick Control 2, press either the top or the bottom of the second one, and we'll continue to go through the rest of these. We'll then deselect Learn, and there we have assigned the controls for all 8 of those controllers. Click Apply, and we're done. So let's take a look at what the pack offers. Along the first 2 rows, we can see we have a whole series of different folders that contained within each one are many different functions representing a lot of commands that you can access for these particular functions. And I encourage you to take a look at the PDF as we detail what is in each section. We're going to concentrate on some of the more specialized features as well as a few other items that need setting up. Now let's just get into the project folder here. You see we have a number of functions related to projects, but we also have an add track folder here. Now if we go into here, you'll see that we can add a specific track at the press of a button. It brings open the dialog for us, allows us to make our adjustments and include a track. Now you see we have a rename track function here. So if we click on that, this is a handy utility for us to just quickly rename a track that we have currently selected. So let's say I have this track selected, press of a button, I can just change its name to SynthPad, for example. Now in Stream Deck, we can easily just customize this for our own use. If I don't want it to say SynthPad, I want it to say just something simple like keyboard or even KB, if that means something to me. And then what I can do is I can double click this. You can see we have a multi-action. Click on the text. You see it's currently set to SynthPad. Well, we'll change this to KB. Now when I go into Cubase with my current track selected, it's going to relabel it, what I've just entered. So it might be a handy tool for you to use. Now going back out, you can see we've got a Colorize folder here. Now this allows us, as the name suggests, to colorize any track that we currently have selected. So let's select this red one here, and we'll just turn it into blue. Very simple, self-explanatory. But we also have an event folder here, and this allows us, when we go into it, we can select events on a track or even on multiple tracks. See, I just have different events selected, and I can just colorize them independent of their track color. Now bouncing back out, you can see following that we have audio, MIDI, and media, different folders with different functions pertaining to those sections. And then we have a quick control folder. So with quick control, this allows us to take advantage of the quick control feature that is available in Cubase. So let's open up our Halion VST here, and if we go over to the top and click on QC for the quick controls, that pulls these down, and we have these 8 controls available to us. Now in the VST folder of our Stream Deck pack, you can see we can adjust plus or minus, first control, second control, etc. All these are now live for us to be able to use through quick control. So as you can see, we also have a repeat of the rename track folder placed here. But let's just jump over into the MIDI keys. Now this gives us a bank of keys. It's a basic key controller for us. So if we have a VST opened here, we can control any different notes from the Stream Deck device. Now with your VST opened, we can also use it to cycle through all of our factory presets. So our factory presets on this particular VST are right here, our previous and next. So let's just leave our mouse cursor over top of the previous program, press and hold until we see the check mark on that key. Move it to the next, press and hold, and now we have a quick and easy way for us to navigate our different presets. Then we can cycle through them. All right, stepping back out, we can go back out to the main. Now once we're back in the main, we have Transport, Studio, Window, Tools, and Zoom, all different folders you can explore with the help of the PDF. Details all the different things that are involved in each of these folders. Now once again, we see the Add Track folder has been added in here as well, but it also has one additional folder here that we haven't seen, and that is Custom. Now if we go into Custom here, what this will allow us to do is control any of the parameters in our VST. So let me show you how that works. So let's open up this Arturia one, for example. Now just by placing my mouse over top of any one of these parameters and leaving it there, and then using the up-down arrow key, I can make the adjustment. Move my cursor over to another one, and I can make the adjustment. Well, this is fine, but you don't want to be moving the mouse each time. So that's why all these other keys are here. We can set a parameter and lock it to each one of these keys. So for example, on the A1 key, let's say we want that to be this master parameter. So we'll go to the A1 key and we'll press and hold it until we see the check mark. Now that position is locked. And let's go over to the brightness. We'll press and hold for A2 until you see the check mark, and we'll do the timbre as well. So press and hold until you see the check mark. So now I can press A1 and I can then adjust. Then press A3 and make my adjustment. Press A2 and I can do the brightness, and then I can jump back to master. And you can do this for any parameter here that allows you to make adjustments. If you wanted to, you could also adjust these controllers as well. Since these are vertical controllers, we can also control them. So if I assign that to A4, and now I can move this slider up and down. So pretty much any parameter you have in your VST, you can assign to specific controls and be able to control them. Now you see we have 2 other controllers for a total of 3 different kinds of controllers. They do different things, and you will find certain behaviors with certain VSTs work better than others. So it'll be up to you to experiment as to which one of these controllers works best for the VST you're working with. Now let's cancel out of Analog Lab, and let's open up Halion again. The second knob is mostly dedicated to Cubase specific VSTs, such as a Halion here. So if I go to the second one, you'll see I am able to make the adjustments on whatever I'm mousing over. And this is much smaller increments. I can still use the up-down for this, and it's a little more responsive. Same thing with the third dial. You see the difference between the first and the third. You see my mouse is moving, but it will snap back. With this one, even though it's a little bit slower, the mouse stays in place. This is useful if I'm working on a VST that has another dial directly above it, because what might happen is if I'm using this dial, once it gets over top of that other dial, it may start affecting it, so you would choose to use this one instead. So it's all experimentation as to which one of those controllers work best for the VST you're working with. Now, one additional feature, you'll see that we have a lock feature here. What that allows me to do is, with my cursor in place, I can press on lock, and that locks that position. Now I can make my controls and adjust it, but I can now move my mouse off and do something else with my mouse, and I can still control that parameter even though my mouse isn't over top of it until I press lock, and then that has released it. Now let's move into the mix console page. Now this, of course, will give you some very familiar features which you'll be familiar with. Starting with our track fader, you can see we have our bass clean is currently selected in our mix console. So by making this adjustment, you can see Cubase responds with the selective track. And of course we can scroll down to the end of our tracks here, and I can see that I can control the master. Now of course we can use these track buttons to navigate through the different tracks, allowing us to control them. We can control our panning with these two. And then of course we have the array of mutes and solos, reads, writes, etc. Now let's get into the control room. Now we can launch the control room with this button here. Now we've tied specific things to the control room that you can explore. You can see that we can adjust our dim, our reference level, and our metronome. We can also make some adjustments here with the talk dim, the listen, and the click. Can also be controlled with these faders. So a very handy feature to have the control room controls available for you on the Stream Deck. Back out, let's go into the VST Utility. Once again, we have the add track, rename track, colorize. We've already seen those. Let's go into the VST controls, and you see we have two on this page. Let's click on Arturia first, and we'll open up our Analog Lab. Now I've got Analog 4 up here at the moment, and one thing to point out at the bottom here under MIDI controller in the Arturia VST, you want to make sure this is set to Essential, MK2, MK288, Minilab, the Minilab MK2, or the Microlab. If it's set to any of the others, these controls will not be working. So let's just set this to, say, something like the MK88. And now we can control any of these right out of the box. You can see we're able to control any of these dials. You'll also be able to press preset and then navigate the different presets. You can press on instrument and be able to cycle through your different instruments, and you can execute with that key there. Going back, we can open up Halion. This does the same thing as we just showed with Arturia. Now in VST Instruments, this allows us to load a VST of our choice into a track at the press of a button. So as long as we have that VST loaded on our system, you'll create a new track with that VST. Now we have to do one little bit of setup on this page in order for it to be functional, and that is this instrument keybind key. So let's start by pressing the Add Instrument track. This will bring up our Add Track dialog box, we're going to position our mouse cursor over top of the instrument drop-down, just about right here. And we're going to press and hold on instrument keybind until we see the checkbox. And we can cancel out of that. That's all this page needs. Now, you can select any one of these VST buttons as long as you have that VST loaded on your system. It will create a new track and load that VST into it. Now you see we have a preset folder here, just the way we showed you earlier with presets. It works the same way, except it's dedicated to presets. What we can do is, let's say we want to record the positions for our Halion presets. So once again, previous, we'll assign it to this key here till we see the checkbox, and then we'll go to the next and we'll assign it to this key till we see the checkbox. Now I can press those at any time and go through my different instruments. And you can go into your Stream Deck software and we can add in the title. So we can say that this is for Halion. We could label them both the same way. Now it's great having that preset, but it's not terribly handy having it tucked away in this folder. That's why you can customize this. Just like anything in Stream Deck, you can customize things how you like. Most people do. So I can click on this, right click, I can say copy, and I can find a place anywhere in this profile to paste that key that makes it handy for me. And I can, let's say I find it handy here that I'd like those presets for this VST here, and I would do the same thing with the next and paste it here, and then they're now in a place that's more convenient for me. Now if you can do the same thing with the VST keys itself. If you wanted to, you can right click this, copy and paste it wherever you like. However, this key is not going to work unless you bring along this key that you bound, because, not to get too technical, but how this actually works, this looks for this key to be present on the page so it knows where to go. So you would need to copy this one as well. As long as it's on the same page as this one, it will look for that and be able to position itself correctly. And it bears mentioning that any of these keys can be moved around, reorganized to suit how you like to work. You don't have to be locked into how we've got them, except for making sure that this key is present when you're driving something like a VST loader. Now you notice that we have a user VST plugin folder down here. And this is for VSTs that you have that don't appear on our pre-made page. We have several here, some of the more popular ones, from Halion to Analog to the Korg Tritons, etc. So you likely will have VSTs of your own that don't appear there. Well, that's what this user page is for. So how you can customize this for your use. You'll notice first of all that we have that same instrument keybind key that we had in the previous page. Well, you already keybound this. You already recorded the position. So the easiest way to do this is just copy this, go into your user, and we're just going to paste over top of that. Now that will still contain your coordinates that you recorded, so that these keys will work in the same way that these keys will work, except you can enter in anything that you like. So let's just say I want to load in a particular VST. So I can click on Add Instrument Track to bring up that dialog box. And let's take a look at my loaded VSTs. Let's say I want to load in this Synclavier. So we want to make sure that we type it in exactly as it appears here. Synclavier 5. Let's say I want to apply that VST to this key. I'm going to double click this, and this is of course a macro that we've got set up. You're going to go to this system text, because this is what's going to type in the name of that VST. And I'm going to type it exactly as it appeared in that dialog. And of course I can go out here and I can just temporarily add this in. I can add the title. I'll leave it at the bottom there so that I know what I'm loading. go back into Cubase, and it loads the synclavier for me. Now instead of just this user icon, you could probably try and find your own icon. We've included in the pack in the icons folder, if you go into VST and VST again, you'll see that we have several VST icons included for you. There's about 80 or so here. And hopefully you'll find the one that applies to the VST you'd like to include. Unfortunately, I don't think we have the synclavier here, but I can use, so it's an Arturia product, so I can just drag in this A1 into there, and if I want to, I can then turn off my title since I don't need it anymore. Now, beside the VST Instruments, we also have Insert Effects. This does the same thing as the VST Instruments. So how we work this, we can select any one of our tracks. We're going to press the Edit channel. Now what we want to do is we want to take our cursor, we're going to mouse over our first insert slot. We're going to press and hold on insert number 1. And we can repeat this process for the remaining 7 if we choose. We'll just do the first 3 here. Now with the Edit channel settings open, we can select an insert slot, and then we can press the effect that we want, and it will load it into that slot for us. Press number 2, and I can choose a different effect. Once again, you see that we have 4 user effect slots up along the top here. Much in the same way we showed you how to do the customized instrument tracks, we can do the same thing here. Double click in and click on text, and we would add in the name of the effect that we want to load here, and you'd be able to enter in the name of the effect, and then in Cubase with the track selected you can press your user and it would load in your own effect. So once again, we have the custom keys that we saw from earlier, and the quick control is also here. We have an articulation page as well, so you can work with all your different articulations. Once again, the MIDI keys like we showed earlier, and you also have operating system keys should you want to be using an on-screen keyboard controller. So in the Windows version of the VST Utility, you see you have a few extra controls here. Now this is our VST Utility that we've been able to build that will allow you to use an external volume controller to control various elements within Cubase. Now quickly to get that set up, depending on which version of Cubase you're working with, I'm currently on the Windows system working with Cubase 12, so I would select my Cubase 12 script utility here, and you can see that I need to navigate. I'll select File, I will navigate to my Documents folder, and into that script utility I would select the Cubase Utility 12. And now when I go to Cubase and I select that key, I then will hit Activate, and you can see down at your system tray, you'll see that this script indicator shows that the script is running. So we can use zoom time and then rotate my volume controller, and I can zoom in and out of the timeline. I can press zoom vertical, and that will expand and contract my tracks. I can press scroll, and of course, as expected, we can use this as a scroll function. We can also use our volume controller to control VST parameters. So let's launch add track here for analog 4. So we can control the different parameters within our VST. I've got the Arturia one up right now. So in order to make it active for an Arturia VST, I would click on one of these keys here. Now this is for any VST that is non-native to Cubase. If you're working with something like a Halion, you would go with the AI knob first. You hit that first, and then you'll be able to make your controls. So we've clicked on the one for a non-Cubase version, third-party VST. I'm going to place it over top of my first parameter here, and I could use these keys to make the adjustment, but we're really focusing on how we can use our volume controller. So we've got our third-party volume controller. This is an Amos, and I can with my cursor over top of that parameter, I can use my controller to make that adjustment. And I can move my mouse over to the next one and make an adjustment there as well. That's okay, but you have to keep moving the mouse. What if we could assign those parameters to specific keys? Well, like we showed you with the custom page, which we've also included on this page, you can do that very thing. So let's go into custom. Because we are still active in our script, we can make some assignments for these parameters on these keys. So let's go to the first one here, and we'll press and hold on A1 until we see the check mark. We'll move mouse over pot number 2, check mark for the key, and for 3, and now I can bounce between them. And make my adjustments. So you can quickly assign any of the parameters you want, and you'll see that sometimes you'll get a yellow arrow, but you're still able to make the function. It's just a kind of a quirk with the way Cubase uses its floating windows. Sometimes the plugin thinks there's a window in front of it. But you can see that even if you do get that yellow triangle, you're still able to make your adjustments. So until we can work out that little quirk, it's just a visual distraction. It doesn't impede how you operate the profile. And because it's on a window system and we've got the coordinates set to the window, we can move this window around anywhere we like. And by pressing on the button, we're still able to make the adjustments. It follows where that key is. So you can see how you can quickly create a bank of these and quickly make your adjustments with your external volume controller. So that's it. That's the Cubase version 3.0. Please go through the PDF manual as we go into a lot of detail about what's included and how to operate and how to set things up, even beyond what we've just covered here. I hope it helps you in your sessions. As always, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.